So you want to upgrade your vehicle's performance. Maybe you want some better engine noises, or some extra power. This might have you thinking about an air intake upgrade. But does upgrading your intake really make more power? In this video, we're going to cover everything you need to know about automotive intakes. And by the end, you'll have a better understanding of how intakes affect sound and performance of your engine. So you can decide if an intake upgrade is right for you. So why are intakes so important for engines? Well, air has oxygen, which is needed for fire. We can clearly see this principle in action with a candle. Now, if you cover a candle, the flame goes out. Now, this isn't because candles are afraid of the dark, as you might assume, but it's because the flame consumes the oxygen. And once all the oxygen is consumed, fire is no longer possible. At least not without more oxygen. So, when designing or improving engine performance, if you want more power, you can't just cram more fuel into the pistons to get a bigger boom. Yes, you do need more fuel, but you also need more oxygen, which is arguably the more difficult task.
Now, before we do our install, we're going to test our 0 to 60 on an empty open road nearby. This way we can compare before and after to see if there's any differences in the 0 to 60.
We're running from the exact same place, same street, same distance, same start. 3, 2, 1.
Okay, so we ran the truck 3 times 0 to 60. Our best time was 9.87 seconds.
Naturally aspirated engines rely on the vacuum power created during the intake stroke of the engine cycle. So as the piston opens up, the expansion of the space creates a suction force that pulls air into the chamber. Now, in order to get an increase in power, we want to increase the amount of air that can get pulled into the engine over the stock design. So how do we do that? In a stock vehicle, air is usually pulled through an air filter box. The filter box removes any contaminating particles such as dust and dirt, which could damage the engine. Then, tubing from the filter box guides the fresh air into the intake manifold, where it's then distributed to each of the cylinders. That being said, the further the air has to travel and the more restrictions, the harder it is for the engine to suck in air. And every bend and fold in the intake tubing causes some level of friction. The filter is the biggest offender to friction. The filter makes it so that the air has to travel through this fine mesh, causing a lot of restrictions. Now, one easy upgrade option is high flow filters. High flow filters usually have wider filter holes than stock, and it's going to reduce restrictions to airflow. However, they have a downside. The downside is that they have wider filter holes, which will allow more dust and debris to get into the engine. To counteract this, many of these high flow filters have oil applied to them to improve their filtration ability. Another upgrade option to consider is filter shape. Cylinder and cone filters allow for more airflow into the engine by increasing the area for air to enter into the intake tubes. But filters are not the only option when improving your intake performance. Another factor to improve performance is temperature. Now, when it comes to gases as is air, the hotter the temperature, the more spread out the gas is. And the colder the air, the more dense the gas is. So it would go to reason that if we want more power, then we want colder air and higher pressure, resulting in greater air density. In other words, more power. And that brings us to the entire purpose of this upgrade. And it's in the name, cold air intake. So let's put this intake into our truck and reap the rewards of all that sweet cold air. Well, hold on a second, maybe not. Here we have our aftermarket intake. All we have to do is plug this in right here, just like that. Beautiful.
No way, that's ugly.
No, it's fucking race red. Okay, well, this is what you're gonna get if you go with a really cheap option. It's just not right. You have a lot of issues here. First, there's nowhere to put the mass sensor. In other words, the engine has absolutely no way of knowing how much air is coming in. So it can't really adjust the fuel for the amount of air. Aside from that, this quote cold air intake is right in the engine bay. Many low-cost air intakes or short ram intakes like this one make the mistake of pulling in cold air from the engine bay rather than finding a more suitable location. This basically means that we're likely losing some performance in the increase in temperature. And this quote cold air intake is more so a hot air intake. Now, if you want the cool noises, yeah, but if you're going for performance, this is absolute junk. But hope is not lost. Higher end quality cold air intakes know this and solve for this. These upgrades usually pull air from around the wheel well or inside the fender to avoid pulling hot air from the engine bay, typically where your stock intake was already getting air from. That's right, most stock intakes are already cold air intakes, but it doesn't mean we can't improve on it. Okay, let's finally find out if installing our intake is going to make any difference. This kit is pretty cool and pretty complete. It comes with everything we need, but it does require a little bit of assembly. Now the filter here is pretty much one of the best I've seen. It even has more filter material on the center. This kit actually included 2 tubes, and this is for the older model and the newer model. The newer model has the resonators on the intake tube, so that's what this is to account for. Kits like this that have the resonator for the vehicle you're installing it can be a huge benefit in the fact that it'll maintain the function of your stock resonators, increasing and maintaining performance. We have this little seal that we have to install here. So, requires quite a bit of force. All right, so I wonder if we have to cut that. All right, that was kind of tough, but it's in there. Looks good. We also have a vacuum line we need to install. There we go. All right, and that is the last piece we can install here at the bench. From here, we have to move to the truck because these have to be installed independently and then it can come together. So let's go install it in the truck. All right, installing the intake is a pretty simple process. We just have to remove the box, remove the tubes, and replace them with the aftermarket one. All right. We're gonna unplug this. There we go. All right. Now we have this wiring harness completely removed and out of the way. And I think everything's loose and ready to come out. That's 2. Next, the air box also has to come out. Now that I'm remembering, I probably haven't changed this filter in quite a few years. Now, one quick tip is not to mistreat your OEM parts. These OEM parts are worth a lot of money, and if you don't want to keep them, you can sell them for quite a bit of money. So just mentioning, you should take care of your parts. Another hidden bolt. There we go. And that's out. We're supposed to take these grommets out to use them on the other one. I think we first remove the metal insert and then we can take the grommet out. And with that, the grommet should come out a lot easier.
1 eternity later.
There we go. Next one. That. Gotta take this out as well. There we go. One important device we need from our original is the MAF sensor. If you're installing one that doesn't take advantage of your MAF sensor, then you're losing a lot of performance. All right, let's put the real one in. Before we set this aside, let's get our MAF sensor out of here. And there's our sensor. Now we can set this aside. Here on our aftermarket, this is where the MAF sensor goes. Let's clean it up a little bit now that we're here. All right, more or less. It's better than nothing. And there we go. Don't record this, man. They can't know I read the instructions.
Oh, okay.
Everybody's screaming at their phone. Clean it. Fine, I will. You know what? Let's just say it's better. All right, we got to put this little bushing here. All right, that's in. Almost. There we go. One more. All right. That's in. Install this metal insert, just like that. This one as well. Whoops. And there we go. I said don't record me. I'm reading the manual. There's like an empty hole here in the picture. All right, let's install it. First step is the box. Box goes in right here. Put in a couple of bolts.
A few moments later.
It wasn't so hard to get into this goddamn box. All right, hole's correct. Place right there. All right, I think I got that one. And that one's in. All right, we're in. The next step is installing our tube that goes from our box back. And the first major improvement we have here is this massive filter here. That just goes in right there. And we have this clamp here. And we have our tube here assembled. That's nice and tight. Now, how do we get this in here easily?
This part's gonna be hard.
No, there we go. Easy as that. So I was thinking that, this is gonna be hard. Once you have these two tightened up, you can kind of wrestle this out and the filter comes out here. You can clean it, do everything you need to. Put that back in and then just drop this right over. Just like that. Perfect. It's not super easy, but it's not hard either. It's doable. We plug in our MAF sensor right here. Perfect. And we have our gas recirculation line. And there we go. And one last line, our vacuum line, back here. And there we go. We're ready to go. Let's go do the 0 to 60 and see what this thing does. So this is gonna be the first time turning it on. This is supposed to make a difference right from the get-go with the sound. We'll see if we notice anything starting it up. Let's head out and test it. Let's get out of this garage before we carbon monoxide poison ourselves. But we gotta go to the same location, same place, same start as last time. So let's head over there. That's a bigger difference than I thought from the sound. I thought it was only going to be like the suction noise, but it actually changes the engine rumble as well, the tone it puts out. I can hear the intake.
Yeah.
3, 2.
Okay, before our best time was 9.87 seconds. Now, with the upgrade, our best time was 9.65 seconds. To be exact, 0.22 seconds faster. Now, if we make some calculations, that 0.22 seconds improvement in percentage is a 2.2% increase. In our case, 2.2% is probably not going to be noticeable. Regardless, it does seem like we've improved performance, albeit by a small amount.
Most vehicles will only see a very small increase in performance over the stock intake, maybe 1 or 2 horsepower. A lot of the times it's an increase that's maybe not even noticeable. Now this may come as a surprise, but the truth is that the engineers who work on intake designs for most vehicles already put a ton of effort into optimizing airflow and making the intake a really good design. But I'm gonna let you in on a secret. Whoa, that's a bigger difference than I thought from the sound. That alone is reward enough for me, and is the case for many. The sounds elevate the driving experience, and at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. Enjoying your vehicle and the open road.